Hi, it's Bren. We are doing another episode of Things by Bren. And today we are also doing an episode for the Kansas Coalition for Sentence and Prison Reform. We are with Joe Bell Jr. He has done a lot of time. And his story is one that's miraculous in a way because he got a life sentence with no chance of parole. And yet we're sitting here with him today doing an interview. So, Joe, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your story. And I'll ask you some questions as we go on and interject some things. But I want to hear about you. What happened in your life?
Okay, well, first I want to thank you, Brenda, for having me.
Oh, you're
I'm
quite
happy to
welcome.
be here. And a little bit about my story is that I grew up in San Francisco, um, divorced parents at 6 years old. It was a broken home. And that's not to say that, no, I should have not did what I've done. I was convicted of murder, robbery, and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole at 26 years old is
Mm.
when I was arrested. I had a 4-year-old son at the time, and so he grew up without his father in his life. And yeah, I made some bad decisions growing up, um, using drugs and living a fast life. And yeah, that landed me in prison for 24 years and 10 months.
Now, obviously, you aren't doing life. So, what happened? How did you get out of there?
Well, by the grace of God,
Mm.
I was commuted. My sentence was commuted in 2018, so that was about 20. Trying to do the math in my head. So I went in 1995, so 2018, roughly 23 years. I got commuted, and I credit my grandma for that. May she rest in peace. She passed away in 2008, and one of her letters said that she would continue to pray for me, that
That's
we would
wonderful.
get a that we would get a governor that would change the laws. So I believe by her prayers, Jerry Brown commuted my sentence. Of course, I put in the application. I didn't know about a commutation application. Somebody on the yard told me. He said, "Yeah, you just fill out this application." So I did it, and then 3 years later, I did it in 2015. 3 years later, 2018, my sentence was commuted to 25 to life. But it didn't stop there. I still had a life sentence.
So, you had an attorney that also was pro getting you resentenced. What was
Oh
that
yeah.
battle like?
Well, that battle, I had 25 to life, then a new law came out that said if you weren't the actual killer in a crime, that you can have an opportunity to go back before the judge and get resentenced. So they assigned me a lawyer. And the lawyer, that battle it was a long battle. I went in to the county jail, I think July 2019. And they went back and forth until May 2020. And the DA's office out of San Francisco decided to put in for my resentence. They requested that I be resentenced under Penal Code 1170D, which is also a relatively new law where it gives the judge or any um, a prosecutor, a judge, or the CDCR, the prison system, or any counselor, and I think even the public, to request that you get resentenced.
Oh,
And
wow.
so under that law, they requested I get resentenced. So I went from 25 to life to 12 years and 4 months.
But you did 24 years and 10 months.
Yeah, that was the catch for me. I guess I could have kept battling back and forth with my lawyer and the DA, and I believe I would have won the battle. I don't know how long it would have took. Basically, I accepted their offering, which was 12 years and 4 months. But in return, I had to waive all my good time credit.
Right.
And some of that credit was like, for example, I got an AA degree while in prison. I would get 6 months off. But now I'm on 3 years parole. That was another part of the resentencing.
And they
And
gave you parole even though you did more time than your actual resentencing, which I think is just absurd.
Yeah, and it wasn't even specified. I recently
Hmm.
seen the DA, and they said that, well, the judge, she said, she put on the judge that he did that on purpose to, because they just didn't want to just let people out so free willingly. So it doesn't even specify 3 years. It just says, must complete some parole. I think the
Right.
word they use. Yeah. So
You
I'm
would
still
think it would
checking into
be
that.
very specific.
Right,
You
right.
should
How
have an
the
end date to it. Most contracts have to have a start date and an end date, and that's basically what your parole is that you're not going to commit another crime while you're
right.
basically under this agreement. So what was prison like for you?
It was scary at first. It was nerve wracking. It was frustrating. It was violent. It was later on became productive. You know, it took me a while to finally settle in. I never accepted my sentence, but I accepted where I was at, because my sentence said that I would die in prison.
Right.
Life without the possibility of parole means you never come home. And there are still 5,000 men in there, and I think 200 or 300 women in California that
It's a
still
lot.
have that sentence. So uh, once I got through all the riots and the violence and stuff like that, and figured out how to keep myself out of that stuff, and eventually matured, I got into programs with working with at-risk youth, and eventually getting educated, going to college, then went to Microsoft. I got certified in Microsoft Office,
That's
and
good.
then yeah, then I started creating my own programs when there wasn't any, and I just made the best of my time.
Right. Now, what kind of a degree did you get?
A degree
Hmm.
in social science.
Very
Yeah,
good. Very good. Did did they allow a lot of visitation? What was it like to see your family?
it was up and down. There were times when, for example, my nationality is Black, Mexican, and Filipino.
Hmm.
In prison, if you have a drop of Black blood, you're Black.
Right.
So, but within our Black community per se, um, for example, I was going to a visit to see my dad and mom and my son. So I was on my way walking out there, and the Crips got into a riot with the whites because the white guy wanted to be a Crip. And that happened back then. It don't happen as much now, but
Right.
back then, that's what happened. And me being Black, I had to go back to my cell, and I couldn't get my visit
Oh,
that day.
did they travel to see you?
Yeah, 2 hours,
Well,
2 hour
still,
drive.
if it was 5 minutes or 5 days, either way, they weren't going to see you.
Well, for my son, I think it was maybe 6 or 7 in. So for him, that probably seemed like eternity
Right.
because he's
Right.
this close to seeing his dad, and now he couldn't. So
And
they
then
took him to Monterey. They took
when
him
you
to
have to go
Aquarium.
back, when you have to go back to your area, your compound or your unit or whatever it is they call it, do they lock you down when that happens so you can't even make a phone call to tell them what's going on?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
they're left in limbo as to, what's wrong? Why can't I see you?
yeah. They were scared for me
Hmm.
because they didn't know what happened. They didn't know if I was involved. They just heard shooting, and yelling and everybody down and pepper spray and tear gas and them things. And yeah, so I put my family through a lot, you know,
I
with
think
my
anybody
incarceration.
that's been incarcerated puts their family through a lot. I like to tell people who watch that the person who goes to jail, the person who goes to prison, the person who gets locked up has also put their family in a victim situation because they don't get to see you anymore. Oftentimes, if it's in a spouse that has the job, they've lost their income, they've lost their
Mhm.
support system, they lost a friend, they've lost a loved one. Not only that, the community tends to look down on them and they either get, oh, I feel so sorry for them, or they're ashamed of them, or they want to not even discuss things with them because that's taboo. Their son went to prison, so we don't want to associate with that family. And that's not right either, because your family is not you. And I want to make things clear to the public that Joe is not the one that actually committed the murder. He was guilty by association to basically say what happened to him. So he was going to do life for a murder that he did not commit. And
That's correct.
by the grace of God, we had a governor that came in and changed some laws, and he was able to get out. That is really what happened in his story. It doesn't happen for a lot of people. What were your feelings when you found out you were going to go home?
I didn't know how to feel. I was numb, you know. And yeah, and I agree with everything you said about, that my family suffered, because of my mistakes, my bad decisions. And it wasn't just me, during that time. My son lost not only his father, but a mother and a father together.
Right.
Me and his mother divorced. And I'm blessed with my love of my life now that I should have been with 30 years ago. We met, so then there's that. But yeah, it was a good feeling. At the same time, it's weird. It's like almost like an outer body experience. So when I finally got home, getting back used to everything moving around, the
Yeah.
prison's a little slower. There's a
Plus,
little
you went in
anxiety.
before technology took this big
Right,
spike. So what year did you
right.
go in?
1995.
1995. And now I think the internet was kind of in play back then, or just coming
They
around,
had
maybe.
the flip phone. The flip phone that just
Right.
came out, but it was rare that people had them.
Hmm.
My brother had one. I've used one back then, but it wasn't no text messaging,
So now
no
you come out to
video.
everything being smart: TVs, phones,
Yeah,
computers, just
yeah.
everything is completely different. How long did it take for you to adjust?
I'm still adjusting, and I've been out a year. I'm learning something all the time. One of the good things I just learned though is, but I learned computers in prison.
Hmm.
Eventually, Life Without couldn't get the computer classes because it was in a not so secure area. So once I finally got it, I took full advantage of it. So I just found out that PowerPoint and slides, Google Slides, is almost the same. So that
Yeah.
was an epiphany for me. So that was kind of fun. And I did my first presentation using slides. So that was kind of fun.
And you're working a unique job for somebody that's been incarcerated, especially as long as you have. So tell us what you are doing right now.
I work for Felton Institute in the Justice Services Department. I'm a peer support specialist. Basically, I work with a case manager that works with people coming out on probation. So I help individuals that were incarcerated get re-entered into society. So they look at individuals like me. I'm not the only one
Hmm.
that did prison time and that were able to come out and transition well, that were the experts in, incarceration and re-entering. So
Right.
they're actually using my expertise, which I'm grateful for.
Oh, absolutely. You can be a big support system for them. It's just kind
Right,
of ironic because usually they don't want you to associate while you're on parole or probation with
right,
anybody that's a felon or that's still doing
right.
time, time being probation or parole. So how did that happen? How do they excuse that? I guess because they're giving you permission.
Yeah, I guess so. And back to your other question, how was the transition? What did it feel like? It was intimidating because even the two jobs I had before that, Tesla and UPS, I was always looking over my shoulder like, are they going to find out that I'm a parolee? And they have so many new laws out here that their background check don't go back to 20, 24 years, 25 years ago.
Right.
So my background is clear, but at the same time, there's that stigma of being a convicted felon.
Right.
So I'm not sure how they do it. I guess they there's felon friendly employers now. They know I have a conviction and they use that as an asset and not a deterrent.
And that's wonderful because felons are people. Felons have
Right.
experience, they have a value, they have a worth, they can contribute. Not only can they do. There's a lot of people who have never been in trouble with the law just because they haven't been caught yet. And when they do,
Right.
they might be facing life, and you're sitting right
Right.
beside them, not even knowing that that's a possibility. Um, with your situation, I see such a calmness in you. I see a peacefulness. I don't see any hate or anger or
Mhm.
resentment. Can you tell us why that is?
Because basically I was in a tomb,
Hmm.
living in them California prisons, level fours, and being locked up in a cement room for days and days at a time on lockdown and what have you. It's like it's mentally draining, like a battery. If you set a battery on a cement floor,
Hmm.
a car battery, it's gonna die.
Right.
So basically, I was in there dying. So now I'm back to life. So by the grace of God, that's why I feel good about life, because God
It,
made it
it
happen.
shows. I wanted you to know it shows. I wanted our viewers to see that change is possible. Because
Right.
when you first went in, I'm sure you were angry. You were contributing to the violence. You were involved in the riots, and then that all kind of dissipated, and you looked for a way out of that to become a different person. Do you see
Yeah.
people who do not change in there?
Um. Yeah. And the ones that aren't, I try to steer away from,
Hmm.
unless they're in a class with me and they're wanting some type of change. Outside of that, it's unhealthy for me to be around that negativity. I try to live life to the fullest and really just accept my blessings. I'm blessed with a beautiful, smart wife. I have,
That's
three sons.
wonderful.
I have grandchildren. So I have a lot to be grateful for.
Hmm.
And
That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that.
yeah.
Well, if anybody wants to talk to you, I know you did a 60-minute interview. Tell us a little bit about that before we get into how they can contact you.
Well, the 60 Minutes interview was through the DA's office that resentenced me. 60 Minutes, I guess, reached out to them because Chester Bodine, the San Francisco DA, is is promoting justice reform and the decarceration movement, because he feels, and he talks about it a lot, is that our laws, the laws of California and United States, they're already in place. A robbery already, it has a amount of time attached to it. A murder has amount of time. If it's not death, there's an amount of time. So it's almost like a waste of money to add more time. So there's so many, mandatory minimums. Like in my case, it was either death or life without the possibility of parole.
So
The
either way,
judge
it's
didn't
life.
even
Hmm.
Right. The judge didn't even have the discretion to strike the special circumstances, what they call it, robbery, murder, special circumstance. They couldn't even strike it if they wanted to because of the law. So God willing, them laws will change too, you know.
So how do
And
you feel about mandatory minimums?
mandatory minimums, they make no sense. They leave no space for humanity.
That's correct. I
You
feel the
know.
same way. I,
Yeah.
I think each crime needs to be standalone. The situation
Mhm.
needs to be looked at. And our justice system already is not fair. So when
Right.
you completely look at it like your situation, it was either life without parole or death. Does California have the death sentence penalty still, or is that
Yeah, they
still in
do.
effect? Yeah. So either way, you're dying in prison with that, and you didn't even
Right.
commit the murder. So
Right.
it'd be different if you actually committed that act and were
Right.
guilty of everything that they were saying, to not be able to get resentenced. But the
Right.
fact that you did not commit the crime and you were getting the
Right.
same punishment as the person who committed it, that actually
Mhm.
did the deed, that's not right.
Right.
That's not right. And I am glad that you were out. So 60 Minutes was doing a segment on basically your story
Right.
and how the laws needed to change.
Yeah.
That's good. Not too many
But
people.
I would
60
also
Minutes.
like to add, though, even those that are on death row, I think everyone has their redeemable qualities,
I
you
agree.
know, and I know that's a hard dilemma right there, the death penalty. There were times when I was in there that I thought, death would have been easier. If they would have just killed me, it'd have been easier than doing life and not knowing if you'll ever get out. Because there's always that little bit of hope right
Mhm.
there.
Yes.
but then it goes away. So I think, the death penalty is more definitive. But yeah, I just like to say that everybody, has a redeemable quality.
They do. It doesn't excuse the crime, especially in a violent crime like that, but it does say that people can change.
Right,
The punishment still has to be the punishment, but if somebody has truly changed, they're going to see a peaceful life even behind bars. They're going to be
right,
content, and you come to acceptance with what your charges are and what your life is going to be like. But it doesn't make it easy. It
right.
just doesn't. You're the thought process when you got told your sentence, what went through your mind knowing that you were never going to come out again?
Um, I don't know, you just go blank. You don't know what to think,
Hmm.
you know. And I guess that's when you fall to your knees and you pray to God.
Yeah,
You know, that's all you can do. You can either give up or give all your faith to God.
which is what you did.
Yeah,
And a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people tend to accept prison and live out their life in prison the same way they did on the streets, which is
right,
also not a very good way to live. Or you can make the changes to become a better person using your
right,
faith, using your newfound beliefs, and changing from the inside out. And then look what happened with you. The Lord
right.
honored your change, and you got out. I mean, that's just amazing. It's just
I,
absolutely
I
amazing.
I've even seen those that, like you said, live the way they were living on the streets inside prison. Even some of them eventually they grow out of it. They mature. They
That's good.
mature out. I like to say that I don't think I actually ever really matured until I turned 40 years old. I'm 52 now, you know, and and those that don't change, there's a sickness. They need extra help, and I don't think incarceration is the answer. After a certain amount of time, you can
Right.
only be punished for so long for something if it's not registering in your mind that there
That's
needs to
true.
be a change. There's something else.
No,
Yeah.
that's true. The mental aspect of incarceration is real. Not only is it real while you're doing the time, it's real when you come out because now your whole life has changed. Your reputation's gone. Your the way people view you is completely negative. So now you've come out, you've got a changed environment because it wasn't the same when you left it. You've got to rekindle relationships with your family, with your loved ones. You've got to
Mhm.
form new friendships. You got to find a job, and everybody seems to be against you.
Yeah.
And when it all comes together, you got to be proud of yourself because
Right.
you made that happen against all odds. And that's a
Right.
wonderful, wonderful feeling.
Yeah, and it did take a long time for me to regain the trust of my friends and my family
Hmm.
because I do have a lot of support. You know, I won't say that all through the years. I've had family members that been by my side the whole time, and some that weren't, and friends that been gone.
Right.
But it's about gaining their trust again and earning, that
Relationships
trust.
are very important.
Yeah,
They are very
yeah.
important. So if people want to reach out to you, how do they get in touch with you? If they want to talk to you about your story, or maybe they have somebody in the California prison systems that's somewhat going through what you went through and they need some help with, how would they get in touch with you?
I think the best way would be to email me at josephbelljr.68@gmail.com, or they can reach out to you and
Okay,
you can.
absolutely. And you guys are always welcome to call me. My number is 913-957-3693. Also, the Kansas Coalition for Sentence and Prison Reform is there to help, not just those that are incarcerated, but their families. We are here to help change laws, help to educate the public about all aspects of incarceration, because when one person goes in, the entire family does the time. And it's important that people understand that it is a family ordeal. It
Yes,
affects more than just the person that's being incarcerated. So, Joseph, do you have anything you want to tell people before we leave? What advice would you give to the public?
I would ask the public, or and believers and non-believers, I'd ask that they believe. believe in God or your higher power for your incarcerated loved ones, for even if you were a victim of crime, for your enemy, your so-called enemy, your victimizer. God is good and he makes a way out of no way.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Don't hang up. I'm going to turn off the record button, but I've got something for you. Do you feel that you were given the tools in prison to lead a successful life now that you're out?
Yeah, I went and got them. I don't. They weren't just given to me. I went. If it
You
wasn't
made it
offered,
happen.
I created it.
Good
Yeah.
for you. That's a good answer. Well, thank you, Joe. I appreciate you doing the segment with us. And again, anybody can reach out to me. You can, all my stuff's at Brenda Ringwood on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, anywhere you need me, come find me. This will be on YouTube. Make your comments. Love to hear from you.